The semi-truck. That long, thundering beast of the highway. It delivers your groceries, stocks your shelves, builds your cities. But here's the strange part. Ask 10 people who invented it, and you'll probably get 10 blank stares. Or worse, 10 different answers. Was it an American? A German? Ford? Daimler? Some guy with too many logs and not enough horses? Today, we're cracking open the logbooks, patents, and myths to answer one surprisingly sleepy but important question. Who really invented the semi-truck? Before the semi-truck, freight was slow, dangerous, and expensive. Railroads dominated long-haul shipping, while horses handled local deliveries. But that created a bottleneck. Rail cars could bring in tons of goods. But then what? Haul it by hand? Use 20 horses? As industry boomed in the late 19th century, especially in America's Midwest and Europe's manufacturing centers, there was a desperate need for something more flexible. Roads were improving, internal combustion engines were gaining power, and the idea of a motor truck was starting to gain traction. But here's the catch. Early trucks were all-in-one machines. The cargo sat on the same chassis as the motor. Great for small deliveries, terrible for heavy loads. That's where the semi-trailer idea enters. Detach the load, move just the cargo, swap trailers out fast. But who came up with that? Let's start with the most widely credited inventor, Alexander Winton, a Scottish immigrant and founder of the Winton Motor Carriage Company in Cleveland, Ohio. In 1898, Winton had a problem. He was building and selling cars, but the roads were terrible, and his customers lived hundreds of miles away. Delivering the cars on their own wheels wasn't practical. So Winton built what he called a semi-trailer, a low-slung flatbed with 2 wheels at the back and a hitch that connected to a modified car in front. The front wheels of the trailer weren't really wheels. They were the drive wheels of the car pulling it. It worked. Winton used it to deliver his vehicles across the country. And in 1899, he applied for and received a patent for this concept. By all modern definitions, this was the first semi-truck, a vehicle that pulls a detachable trailer. The design was crude by today's standards, more wagon than freightliner. But the core concept was there. So case closed, right? Not so fast. Enter August Fuhof, a Detroit blacksmith with a knack for solving odd transportation problems. In 1914, a wealthy client asked Fuhof to help move a boat using a Ford Model T. Fuhof built a reinforced trailer with a pivoting hitch that attached to the back of the car. It worked so well that the client came back asking for another. And then another. Fuhof saw the opportunity and started mass-producing these trailers, eventually founding Fuhof Trailer Company, which by the 1920s would be the biggest semi-trailer manufacturer in the U.S. So why does Fuhof sometimes get the credit? Because Fuhof commercialized the idea. He built the trailer as a true commercial product, scalable, repeatable, and stronger than Winton's original concept. He also coined the term semi-trailer in marketing, helping shape the language of the trucking industry. And unlike Winton, Fuhof's designs were pulled by actual trucks, not modified cars. This evolution made semi-trailers viable for industrial freight, not just niche applications. Now, here's where things get muddy and European. Some sources claim the first motorized freight vehicle, essentially a semi-truck, came from Gottlieb Daimler in 1896. Daimler built a motorized truck with a rear flatbed for cargo, and it's often hailed as the first truck ever. But Daimler's design was an integrated truck, not a semi-trailer. The load was carried on the same frame as the engine, not detachable. So while Daimler pioneered the truck itself, he didn't invent the semi-trailer concept. Still, Mercedes-Benz, which traces its lineage to Daimler, often cites this as the start of commercial trucking. If we're being fair, Daimler kick-started the trucking era, but didn't technically invent the semi-truck. So who did? Well, it depends on what you mean by invented. Let's define this once and for all. A semi-truck consists of two parts: a tractor unit, the truck engine, a semi-trailer, which attaches at a fifth wheel and doesn't have front wheels of its own. Winton's 1898 vehicle? It meets the criteria. Fuhof's 1914 model? It also qualifies, arguably more so, since it's designed for freight. Daimler's 1896 truck? Great machine, but not a semi-truck. So by strict definition, Winton invented the concept. Fuhof perfected and commercialized it. Daimler laid the groundwork for motorized freight. But the invention of the semi-truck wasn't a single event. It was a slow burn. The tech, the roads, the regulations, they all evolved together. And for decades, people just called them tractor-trailers, arctics, or lorries, depending on where you lived. After the basic design was nailed down, the semi-truck underwent rapid improvements. 1916, Fuhof patents the term semi-trailer and creates new models for lumber, coal, and industrial goods. 1920s to 30s, pneumatic tires and electric lights become standard. 1930s, the fifth wheel coupling becomes universal, allowing for safer, more flexible trailer swaps. 1940s to 50s, wartime logistics push innovation, air brakes, diesel engines, sleeper cabs. 1960s to 70s, long-haul culture explodes. CB radios, chrome stacks, and coast-to-coast deliveries define the American highway era. So while Winton and Fuhof laid the foundation, thousands of engineers and drivers built the machine we know today. Today's semi-trucks are rolling computers, telematics, GPS routing, and autonomous prototypes are reshaping the future. But the core idea? A detachable trailer pulled by a powered cab? Still pure Winton. So why does this debate even matter? Because it reminds us that innovation doesn't always come from the loudest source. Winton built a solution to his own problem. Fuhof turned it into an industry. Daimler, arguably, made trucking respectable. The semi-truck wasn't born in a lab or corporate boardroom. It was built out of necessity, in blacksmith shops and dusty garages by people solving local problems. It's a reminder that many of the world's biggest inventions start small. And whether you credit Winton or Fuhof, or even Daimler, you're tracing the lineage of one of the most impactful machines in the global economy. After all, 70% of all freight in the US still moves by semi-truck. That's over 11 billion tons per year. By the mid-20th century, the semi-truck was no longer an American-only innovation. It had become a global phenomenon. Different regions adapted the concept to their own needs, environments, and infrastructure. In Europe, the post-war recovery demanded efficient freight movement across bombed-out cities and narrow roads. Unlike the massive rigs seen in the US, European semi-trucks were more compact, with cab-over-engine (COE) designs that allowed for tighter turning radii and maximized cargo length within strict regulations. Companies like Scania, Volvo, MAN, and Mercedes-Benz began producing advanced tractors tailored for European conditions, smaller cabs, more efficient diesel engines, and stronger braking systems to handle mountainous terrain. Many innovations from Europe, like retarder braking systems and modular trailer setups, would later influence US truck design as well. In Australia, vast distances and brutal terrain gave birth to the road train, A semi-truck pulling 2, 3, even 4 trailers across the outback. These required reinforced frames, heavy-duty cooling systems, and specialized hitches. Kenworth and Mack trucks became favorites down under, often modified for extreme heat and dust. Meanwhile, in Asia, countries like Japan and South Korea began developing lighter-duty semis for urban distribution. Isuzu, Hino, and Hyundai helped meet the growing demand for goods in tightly packed cities, designing fuel-efficient tractors that could weave through narrow streets. In South America and Africa, semi-trucks became a vital link in areas where rail was unreliable or non-existent. Brands like Volkswagen trucks and buses, Iveco, and Tata in India developed region-specific models, some for hauling construction materials up unpaved roads, others for carrying crops across massive rural territories. The point is this: while Winton and Fuhof lit the match, the world took that flame and adapted it in ways they could never have imagined. Today's global trucking industry is the product of over a century of cross-continental innovation. And let's not forget, history rarely credits every contributor. For example, Charles Luce, a Detroit inventor, developed a unique version of the semi-trailer coupling system in the early 1910s. Though his patent didn't dominate, it influenced later fifth-wheel designs. Or John C. Endebrock, who created a trailmobile in 1918 for military use, a detachable cargo trailer designed to be pulled by Ford Model T trucks during World War I. Then there's the black and immigrant mechanics, whose innovations and repairs in the early 20th century quietly advanced reliability and safety. Though few received the recognition or royalties due.
The evolution of the semi-truck wasn't one invention. It was a web of tiny ideas, iterative improvements, and unsung heroes. Brake designs, suspension tweaks, frame reinforcements, aerodynamic cabs, fuel systems, all emerged from different corners of the world and slowly shaped what we now call a semi. And where is it all heading? As of 2025, the semi-truck is undergoing its next great transformation: autonomy and electrification. Tesla's Semi, Freightliner's e-Cascadia, Volvo's VNR Electric, and startups like Einride are developing rigs with no tailpipe emissions, AI-powered routing, and even driverless prototypes. But despite the high-tech upgrades, the core idea, the trailer, and the pulling cab remains. Winton and Fuhof would still recognize it. So next time you see a big rig roaring down the highway, remember, it's more than just a truck. It's a living legacy of human ingenuity, need, and one oddly sleepy debate that still sparks questions more than a century later. So, who really invented the semi-truck? If you want the patent and the original design, Alexander Winton, 1898. If you want the practical freight-hauling machine that built an industry, August Fuhof, 187-1914. And if you want the blueprint for motorized logistics, Gottlieb Daimler, 1896. But one thing's for sure, the semi-truck wasn't born from a single eureka moment. It was forged mile by mile, gear by gear, by a long line of inventors who probably never imagined they'd be part of this sleepy little debate. If you found this deep dive interesting, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and let us know in the comments, who do you think deserves